Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing fantastically well. It is Connor here, and we are back with the Final Word Show. As I said, we're going to try implement some more things on the channel, and the Final Word Show is something I did about 18 months ago now. You guys absolutely loved it. It's more of a reflection on the reflection. So obviously we did the review last night immediately after the game, but I think the final word is going to give me an opportunity to really sit back, reflect, and analyze exactly what went on in sort of the day before's proceedings. So hope you're all doing fantastically well. I know it is a Tuesday morning, so not that many of you, I presume, will be able to tune in. To those who have tuned in, thank you so much. We'll get through a lot of things today, which I'm sure you guys will enjoy doing. It's going to be me talking a lot, which I know you guys are also used to. But yeah, we're going to be discussing everything to do with Leeds United, the performances. But thank you so much for everybody who's joined me so far. I think there's 60 of you in the building, which I did not expect at this time in the morning. Very, very awkward, I know. Morning, Luz. Good to see you again, mate. Yeah, 100%. Hi, mate. Hope you're all right. Big Paul in the building. Imagine it goes to the last game of the season and we need a point. 1-1 92nd minute, Brentford corner. Janssen comes in flying header. Oh, I don't want to think about it, Paul. Dr. Shakamoto, morning corner, scrappy yesterday. At the end, justifying the means, pragmatism from March. Morning, mate. Hope you're all right. At 5 p.m. in Singapore. Perfect time. Just finished work. Darren, there we go. Yeah, for people across the world, it's going to be a better time for me to do these sorts of things. I can't see us losing through on the bounce. I know that's optimistic, but I reckon there's a big upset in there somewhere. Would love to stop City winning the title. Matthew is in the building. Morning, Connor. Point is a point. We'll take it based on how we've played. So it seems to be quite an all-around positive vibe from Leeds fans, which is great to see. 2 minutes, guys. I'm just going to switch my light on. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't on. So giving you guys the best viewing experience possible. But yeah, overall, I have to be brutally honest with you guys. I wasn't really impressed with what I saw. I've got quite a good quote down here, and it's from a guy that I've read several books on, and he stuck in his book. He said, to develop the winning edge, he's a sports psychologist. Small differences in performance lead to huge differences in results, and I guess you can apply that a little bit to Leeds at the minute. But I just saw a few things last night where I was just a little bit worried in terms of how Leeds were going about the business, how the players were reacting to Jesse Marsch, how they seemed after the performance as well, and their words. And I want to get into that a little bit. But overall, just off the bat, it's it's a good point when you isolate the result away at Selhurst Park. It's always going to be a good point. It's going to be a good result because they've lost 4 at home all season. They've taken scalps. You know, they've beaten Arsenal, Tottenham. Obviously, they've drawn with Manchester City. But I think when you just put it into context, there's a lot more to it when it comes to Leeds United. You know, when you look at our fixtures left, you look at the other teams in the rounders fixtures as well. And in my opinion, it's going to take the highest points total for a team to stay up this year in the relegation zone that we've seen in many, many years. It's going to be a real outlier. So I think we can all sort of look at that and think that Leeds need to pick up points. Leeds have to pick up points in the next 3 games. That is how it looks now. I think 3 points at Palace, and you look to yourself and you think we can afford to slip up. As I said last night, we can't afford to slip up anymore. We have to get points in the next 3 games, 3 of the top 4. We have to get points. I think what I sort of noticed last night was the quality of player. Now, obviously with Leeds United, we know the quality of player isn't at the desired requirement. And I think that's sort of a nice way of putting it. It is a team that has aged. It is a team that has done excellently for Marcelo Bielsa, but it is a team ultimately that needs to be recycled, regenerated, revisited in the transfer window. I think we saw that last night. Crystal Palace are a team who weren't levels above us last night, but it was the options, it was the caliber of player they had. And as I was mentioning in the preview, it's probably the most spot-on preview I've done, to be honest with you. The wingers and the width that Crystal Palace played with was going to absolutely hurt Leeds, and it did for the majority of the game. A lot of their play came out wide, and they didn't hurt us in terms of the scoreline, but they hurt us in terms of being able to build out wide and maybe show other teams how to play against Leeds United. So that was something that we noted down anyway, and I think that's something that Leeds expected. But I think with this system now at Leeds United, you are going to see a huge reliance on fullbacks. For me, we're going to get into Rafinha in a little bit, but because of the inversion of the wingers now, the inverted wingers, you don't see any protection for the fullbacks. So if you're playing Stuart Dallas left back for the considerable future, the foreseeable future, I should say, or Junior Firpo at left back for the foreseeable future in the Premier League, you are going to see 1v1s consistently, like we saw last night, like we saw against Aston Villa, like we saw against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And you're consistently going to see our wing backs being exposed. That is how it works in the Jesse Marsch system. So Leeds have to go out and get 2, for me, new fullbacks. Very, very good fullbacks who are defensively astute, but will be able to seamlessly transition into this system as well. And that's got to happen ASAP, because I think there is an obvious reliance on the fullbacks in this system to be very, very, very good. And if the fullbacks aren't very, very, very good, you are going to get exposed time and time and time again. So, yeah, with it being a Jesse Marsch system, we obviously have to get used to it. But the effectiveness of this system has to be made better in the summer, because if this is how we're going to go forward with this Jesse Marsch system, with the fullbacks that we have, with wingers who are going to have to invert into almost 2/8s, it's just going to be a bad season next season for Leeds, and I think we're all aware of that. I think I touched on last night the style of football, and the style of football is huge. Obviously, I think guys, I'm going to get into your comments in just a little bit as well. Sorry, I'm just going to get off my thoughts because I didn't properly do it last night. So I'll get into your comments in just a little bit. But the style of football, I'm not seeing it yet. And one thing I wanted to just touch on, because there's a lot of people saying that you shouldn't see a style of football right now. I've seen a lot of people turn around and say that the transition from Jesse Marsch or Marcelo Bielsa to Jesse Marsch, they play similar styles of football. They do similar things. So that's why Victor Orta and Andrea Radrizzani ultimately went for it. They don't play similar styles of football. It's not a similar way of playing. It's completely different. It's 2 parallels. And I think that's why you're seeing some of the Leeds players, like we saw last night when they looked a little bit disheveled, Click sort of looking like he's arguing with Jesse, Calvin Phillips after the game looking completely dejected, just at the style of football. And you normally see Calvin with a big beaming smile at the end of football games. He didn't have that on his face last night. Liam Cooper in game when Sky just focused on him, looking really frustrated that he just had no options to play with. Dallas throwing his arms in the air at left back when he wasn't able to see any options ahead of him. A style of football makes players clear on what they need to do. And with the 16-day break that we've had, with nearly 6 to 7 weeks under Jesse Marsch, it is all about results. But as I've said at the start, to develop the winning edge, the small differences in performance lead to big differences in results. I don't think we're seeing that many small differences in performance at the minute. And when we are seeing differences in performance, it's very it seems negative on the players. And I think you saw a little bit of that last night. As I keep saying, I'm going to have to reference this consistently. It's a decent point. It is a decent point. And, you know, if we get something out of City, if we get something out of Arsenal and Chelsea, we're all going to be looking back at this and thinking it was an excellent point. But there is also a parallel universe where we look back at this, and it's a very realistic standpoint as well, that Leeds don't get anything in their next three, and teams in the rounders do pick up points in their next three. So that is where this point, maybe fans will turn around and think, you know, I wish we'd have just, with that 16-day break, had more of an idea, had more of a clue on our offensive play to be able to hurt Crystal Palace, who had absolutely nothing to play for yesterday and were arguably the better team. So, yeah, I don't think we can kid ourselves. I don't think we can turn around and say it was a good performance. And as I say, in the long term, I think performances lead to results. And yeah, I think the stats incredible, 11 points out of 15, and this is why fans are all turning around and saying you can't say this, you can't say that, and quite right. 11 points out of 15 is an excellent turn in form, and you can't really criticise at all, to be quite honest with you. But I do think you have to look at the performances, because I think over a 5-game period, it's extremely different than looking at a 10-game period. It's a small sample size. And that's why it's really irritated me, people comparing Marsh to Bielsa already, because the sample size it's ridiculous. The balance is completely favouring one side over the other. So I think you know, we have to take it into context. The stats, 11 out of 15, fantastic. But I do think there needs to be an increased level in performance. I'm seeing a lot of people turning around and saying, because we've kept a clean sheet, because we've done this, because we've done that against the teams in the rounders in our last 6 or last 5, I should say, we're going to be better against Man City. We're going to be better against Arsenal. We're going to be better against Chelsea. Well, these teams play extremely wide. Manchester City play extremely wide. And they have better players than what Crystal Palace do. So it's going to be an interesting game, because you're going to see Stuart Dallas, you're going to see Luke Ayling up against the likes of Bernardo Silva, up against the likes of Jack Grealish potentially, and with the amount of space Conor Gallagher got from Calvin Phillips last night, you're going to see Kevin De Bruyne taking up positions like this. You're going to see Bernardo Silva taking up positions like this. You know, you're going to see Kai Havertz take up positions like this. You're going to see players like you know, Martin Odegaard take up positions like this. So what I'm just trying to say is there needs to be more of an understanding on the system. The players need to understand the system a little bit more, in terms of progressing up the field, in terms of transitions, in terms of keeping hold of the ball, in terms of, I felt last night that the players are overthinking what they need to do, because they have specific automations in how they pass in a Marcelo Bielsa system. They pass out wide in a Marcelo Bielsa system. The fullbacks overlap in a Marcelo Bielsa system. Luke Ayling was trying that last night. They were trying to look out wide last night, but this isn't how we're playing going forward. We play with inverted wingers now. We don't play overlapping fullbacks. So these players are still trying to implement Marcelo Bielsa systems, because the automations in their head are from the past 4.5 years. And this new way of playing is completely different. So the players seem to be overthinking every pass. I think you saw that with Matty's click in the first half. And the way out of that, the way out of a press from an opposing team, isn't to play out, it is to hoof the ball. So if you're going to do that, you have to have someone up front who can control the ball, who can bring other players into play, who can aid Rodrigo, who can aid Matty's click in winning those second balls. At the minute, Jesse doesn't seem to be making a lot of sense when he's choosing Dan James. He doesn't want us to play through the midfield. In my opinion, it seems to be from defence straight to the forward line. So if that is the case, we need to have someone who can hold up the ball. So why are we continuously going with Dan James? Yeah, keep getting your comments in, everybody. Calvin will fit into the sister any team, so he will fit into our system. SB, the game made last night made it quite clear the players aren't good enough. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Marcelo Bielsa masked the lack of quality. Marcelo Bielsa tactics got found out. We need better quality across the pitch. Morning, Connor. Hi, Justin, mate. Hope you're all right. Josh Ratcliffe, I don't think Jesse will bring the best out of Phillips. The system does not suit him. Definitely an argument for that, and one that I am definitely more aligned with. Next three games are free hits. We need to pick up points at Brighton and Brentford. I don't know if that's the right mentality, though, Lewis. I don't think you can get to this stage of the season. And listen, we're going to get onto Burnley, we're going to get onto Everton, but free hits when you were on 34 points and you're potentially looking at a scenario where Burnley can go above us at the weekend on goal difference. I don't know if you can then look at the next 2 to 3 weeks when the season's up pretty much in a month and say that the free hits. We got a point last night. You know, if we get battered in our next 3 or lose our next 3, that's 1 point in 4. I would argue Burnley, when they've got Watford, you know, when they've got I believe Villa in the next couple of, they've got Villa at home as well, haven't they? You literally could see Burnley getting 4 points there or 6 points. Obviously Everton have got tougher games, but Chelsea at home at Goodison, you know, they've beaten Arsenal at home, they've beaten Man United at home, so they are capable of beating the bigger teams at home. We've seen that, haven't we? Leicester away, I think it'll be quite tough for them, but feasibly, Leeds, when you're looking at these other teams and you're looking at their run-ins, they have better run-ins than Leeds United. You've got to take those spectacles off. They have better run-ins than Leeds United, and we're going to get into the form table in a little bit, because if you put in Leeds in a really good position when it comes to the form table, which we are, I will say we're 7th in the form table. You have to look at the other teams who we're coming up against and the teams that we've played in the form table, because you have to apply context. But yeah, I'm going to get into my ratings as well, guys. But before we get into it, there's 152 of you in the building. If you're enjoying the final word, I want to start bringing this to you after I've done my review. And obviously, we'll be bringing you the debrief. So I'm trying to really look into the specifics of the game and really break it down for you guys at home. So if you wouldn't mind smashing a like, that'd be amazing. It just means it ranks higher for me in terms of when people are looking for Leeds United content on YouTube and the internet sphere. If you aren't subscribed as well, please make sure you do so. And I just want to talk about BETMATE as well, guys, before we get into the second half of the show. There was 115 of you there last night, and it was BETMATE's largest paid pot. So thank you so much for that. You only had £3. It was £3 that you had to get involved. There was 115 of you. Winners on the screen: Abra, Dubravka. I don't know if that would be a Leeds fan, but there you go. Nath La, Hawks, The Brainsby, Liam Likes, JR70, XG JHP, who I felt really sorry for. He actually tweeted me and said, I'm absolutely gutted. Obviously, he didn't win the prize share. Stephen in 9th, TJ Williams, Tintin, Liam Taza, and Bannerman won, made up the top 12, but obviously the payout was sort of the top 5 there, and as you can see, Abra Dubravka winning 124, so not bad for a £3 entry. My team got battered. I finished 113, so the less said about that, the better. But yeah, guys, there will be a pot for the Man City game as well, so make sure you're sticking around for that one. But I think a lot of that game last night was a lot of Palace's poor decisions as well. But I think, like we were speaking about with Leeds, the automations were there with Palace because they've been there under Patrick Vieira for a longer period of time, but they knew what they were doing when they were building up from the back. And Palace are now a team that play out from the back, which they weren't doing last season. So that really is a complete change of style. But I think the thing that stood out for me last night was just the quality that they've got coming off the bench. Without any disrespect, when you bring a Michael Elise on and we're bringing Sam Greenwood on, without any disrespect, it's just complete levels. And Palace, let's be right, everybody, it's Crystal Palace. We're not talking about, you know, teams in the top 7 here or top 6, top 4. We're talking about Crystal Palace. So Leeds have got a long way to go in terms of recruitment, and that's why summer is so big. I think Rafinha will leave in the summer. We're going to get on to this. But I think there is a real change coming for Leeds United when it comes to Jesse Marsch, and the system is nowhere near the same as Marcelo Bielsa's. Rafinha is quite staggeringly good when it comes to being as wide as possible. Now, why does he do that? Because naturally, the opposition winger is probably pushed further up on our fullback, and Rafinha gets about 10 yards of space to run at the fullback and isolate the fullback into a 1v1 situation. Normally, what teams have tried to do now is actually pull their winger back, which means that they double up on Rafinha and it enables our fullback to get further forward. That's what we saw under Marcelo Bielsa, although the results weren't really helping and the performances were still horrendous as it was. But that's what you saw a little bit more of. What you see now is Rafinha not helping out the fullback. You've seen Jack Harrison not helping out the fullback, obviously, which means they're a little bit more isolated. And you're also seeing them come inside because Leeds are trying to play narrower and more compact. So you are consistently seeing Rafinha trying to move out wide. For Brazil, he is as wide as possible. He hugs the touchline. Sorry, guys, I don't know how long that was out for. Then my money went a little bit. My money, my mic went a little bit there. So I think it's 2 seconds. So I'll just go over that bit again. But Rafinha, I think the problem with him now is it's going to be his positioning. As I've just said, for Brazil, he was excellent. 2 seconds, says Phil. Yeah, cheers for that. I appreciate that. 10 secs, right? 10 secs. Okay, thanks, everybody. Sorry, I've had to come downstairs. My old man's on night shift, so I can't film in my room. So, yeah, Rafinha is a wide player. We've seen that for Brazil multiple times. That's where he's impressed, especially in the qualifying stages for Brazil. Leeds, he's excellent out wide, and as I said, that's what we've been speaking about when it comes to him being so effective for Leeds under Marcelo Bielsa. With Jesse Marsch, I think Jesse Marsch will be okay with him leaving this summer, and that's where we've got to really think about the progression under Jesse Marsch. We've got to trust in him for the summer because it's going to take a rebuild, but we're rebuilding in his system. And this is where I've said to you guys before, I think Jack Harrison potentially will leave in the summer as well because, you look at Antonio Conte. Apparently, there's a lot of talk about Antonio Conte being interested in turning him into a left wing back. I don't think Jack Harrison will thrive long term into this system because of the narrowness of how we want to play. You heard Jesse Marsch after the game saying last night that we're still drifting into a man marking system. We're still drifting out wide too often for his liking. And that incorporates wingers because that's what wingers naturally do. That's what we've done under Marcelo Bielsa. The style is so different. So I do see Rafinha moving on, and I don't see Marsch having a problem with that if he can bring in his own number eights. Whether or not you guys think that's going to be a problem long term is going to be interesting. But I do wonder if you ask Jesse Marsch that direct question, do you want Rafinha here next season? I'd be really, really interested to hear his answer because the style is always more important than the individual. 100%. So that's going to be fascinating to see because I think I've done a video on it, haven't I, where I've spoken about how I think Rafinha gets way too much criticism. I still think he's been reasonably consistent, even though it's been a downturn in comparison to his standards. But there has been an obvious drop-off when Marsch has come in. And that's not Marsch's fault. That's not Rafinha's fault. But there has been a drop-off, and that's because he's not playing as wide as possible. And that's a problem, as you saw last night. Econ's in the building and said, if this was a Bielsa team formation, square pegs in round holes effort, we'd have lost 3-0. Yeah, 100%. I think that's right. But I think you've got to look at styles going forward. I think you've got to look at Leeds' development and staying up is obviously the priority. But I think, the next 5 games are going to be very telling in terms of, you have to judge. You can't really judge Jesse Marsch fully now. But if you judge him at the end of the season and we've gone down, that's a failure, especially with Everton changing manager and Burnley changing manager. So quite correct. We potentially would have lost 3-0 under Marcelo Bielsa. But I don't know if you can really use that stick because then there'd probably be an argument thrown back that Leeds might have won that game 3-2 if we'd have been playing hell for leather football. We'd have maybe squeezed it out at the end, or it might have been 3-3 or 3-2 or whatever. But Leeds probably would have had a little bit more going forward. So the argument is it's a difficult one to compare Marsch and Bielsa now. Ultimately, on this channel, you guys know I think Bielsa leaving was the right decision. Jesse Marsch coming in as manager, none of us expected, and we'll have to wait and see at the end of the season if this is the right move. But I think he's got to learn from the Robin Koch moves. He did it in the Norwich game. He brings him on in central defensive midfield. I don't care if he's played there for Freiburg. I don't care if he's played there for Leeds. I don't care if he's played there for Germany. He's not a central defensive midfielder. He doesn't move the ball quick enough. He gets caught in possession too often in that central defensive midfield role. And he's a bit pedestrian for me. He's not a central defensive midfielder. The speed of football in the Bundesliga is completely different to what it is in the Premier League. And I think you saw when he came on last night, don't get me wrong, there was a couple of heavy tackles which he won, but I think when you're looking at his percentages in terms of the individual battles in the midfield, Robin Koch lost them, but also Calvin Phillips lost a lot of battles last night. So yeah, I think that decision, and I understand with Threadbare, I understand Adam Forshaw's out for the remainder of the season, but in that case, just keep Click on. And I know Click was poor last night, but I don't think Robin Koch even shows us up defensively when he's in that CDM role. I think it all goes a little bit chaotic, and the biggest example of that was the Norwich game when he came on and everything just went absolutely nuts in the midfield area. Norwich started to gain space, they started to gain territory, and they curated a couple of chances out of it. Tiny's in the building, says massive squeaky bum time. Sad to see Raf go, says James Sanders, sorry mate. But players need to fit the manager's vision. Our wingers need to adapt or move. James isn't a striker and Harrison isn't a CAM like Villa from the Grealish transfer. Honestly, I think people are writing us off against the next 3 games already. City, okay, maybe, but Arsenal and Chelsea can see us putting in a shift. And yeah, I think, the positive thing about that is the fact that 3 of the next 4 are at home. And that's not what a lot of people are missing out on that. 3 of the 4 are at home. You still have the same pitch. You still have the same players. The atmosphere is obviously different, which is massively beneficial to Leeds. You'd rather 3 of the 4 games been at home than 3 of the 4 games been away, of course, even though Leeds have been decent away from home. When you look at the actual form table over, a 10 to 15 game period. But yeah, I think the positive is we look better at the back. We look better at the back, but it's that yin and yang thing, isn't it? You're better at the back. You're not conceding from set piece, from corners anymore. You look a little bit more defensively assured, but that's now compensating for us going forward, isn't it? It's almost like, we do get the ball at the minute and it's just getting rid of it as quickly as possible. We've almost gone from a system where it is all about possession and build up to, and this is why it's difficult for the players. It's difficult for the players to really transition into this system, because you've gone from build up being essential, moving the ball through the transitions being essential, getting the ball out wide as quickly as possible being essential, overlapping fullbacks being essential, to a completely different system. And once again, that's not Marsh's fault. But that transitional period may be more difficult than others imagined for the period of time that we've had Jesse Marsh in, and it definitely looks like that now. I thought it was pretty decent for us that Elise and Mitchell didn't play, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I've got down here about Jesse's comments after the game. He was asked about what was worked on, and I wanted to touch on this. I wanted to touch on exactly, when he's talking about. So Jesse was asked after the game what Leeds worked on, and he said lots of tactical nuances. Now, we're taking a step back and looking at it without any sort of hat on, because I try to be as objective as I can in football, even when it comes to Leeds. I didn't see any tactical nuances at all, if I'm honest with you. Good point, as I keep saying. I keep having to refer to this, a good point away from home in isolation, and I'm also making that point as well. But there was no tactical nuances in that game whatsoever. Now, if he's saying that, and we've seen that the players look visibly frustrated throughout the game, Cooper, Click, Calvin after the game, Dallas, it does worry you a little bit, because what tactical nuances are there that we've been working on? Because I didn't see any at all. And I think that's something that we all need to cling on to. And if you have just joined the stream, I've mentioned this quote at the start, and I want to keep referring to this, but developing the winning edge, small differences in performance leads to huge differences in results. And I think that's what we need to gain at the minute. But by getting small differences, the style needs to develop. and I don't think there's a style at the minute. And going into the next 5 games, we need to just put these games behind us. 11 points in 15, fantastic. But, you know, you need to contextualize the teams that we've played, which I will get onto in a little bit, which a lot of you are not going to like hearing me say. We had to get the points, but you've got to look at the teams that we've been playing against, and you've now got to look at the 5 teams that we're coming up against. And for me, if you've been working on tactical nuances, you've developed a little bit of a style, which I said in the preview, I wanted to see a style after 16 days rest and nearly sort of 7 weeks in charge. I don't think we've seen that yet. To keep getting the rebuttal of it's all about results, but I still think you need a style to get better results. You need to have players understanding the style that they're playing in to get results. And in these next 5 games, we're going to have to understand the style a little bit more and the tactical nuances a hell of a lot more. Tom McNamara in the building. I think Marsh is trying to get people into the system more than working on transitions, potentially, mate. Yeah. Carl says 38 points, not enough to be safe this season. Do you know what the thing is, Carl? A lot of people keep talking about the points total. You know, we're talking on the debrief, and Brownie, you know, quite rightly, based on what was going on at the time. You know, for example, was saying something like Burnley have only won 3 or 4 games all season, and I was trying to make the point to Brownie and obviously KG on the debrief that the relegation running is completely different to what the season has been, and that you've got to put it into context. The relegation running is where teams down at the bottom, you know, it's like Pokemon cards. You gain +5, +10 when you go into battle, and that's what relegation teams do. It's notorious that teams in and around that bottom 3 start to pick up towards the end of the season. And that's why you cannot base Burnley, you cannot base Everton on the 20 games before. You really can't. And I know we're looking at the form table, but the form table, when I dumb it down, I make sure it's filtered into the last 5 or 6 games because they are important. But what Burnley did on August 18th isn't a reflection on what Burnley are going to do on, you know, April the 18th. It's not a true reflection. So that's what I'm talking about putting things into context. The 38 points thing, you'd expect so. You really would. But I think the quality down there this year, you know, you might watch Leeds, you might watch Everton, you might watch Burnley, you think, God, they are crap. And I agree. I think we're all very bad teams. But it seems like teams are grinding out points. You know, Leeds have got 11 points in 15. We're on 34 points and we're still not out of it. That's incredible. That is incredible. Burnley have got 10 points out of 15. They've lost 1 game in 5 and they're still not out of it. You know, the standard is better. It's much better than there has been. So 38 points, I don't know. I honestly don't know, because you look at Burnley's fixtures, and I've just mentioned to you guys, I didn't expect them to get anything against Wolves. And you guys know I get bantered all the time for talking about Burnley. I thought they'd beat Southampton, where I was right. I thought they'd pick up a point against West Ham, which they did, but I didn't expect them to beat Wolves. They've beaten Wolves. You know, they've got 7 points out of 9, and they've got Watford away and Villa at home coming up. Winnable games. So you're looking at a scenario where they've got Newcastle at home at the end of the season as well. Don't know how that's going to go. You know, and then you've obviously got Everton with Palace at home, Brentford at home, Watford away. So all these teams can accrue some serious points. And I think people need to stop basing it on what's happened 10 games ago, what's happened 15 games ago, the fact they don't like Frank Lampard. And it'd be funny to see him in the Championship. Because actually, when you're looking at it, but all 3 of us are really up for this. So, yeah, who knows? But yeah, but I think during the game, I think the thing that stood out for me was the inaccurate passing, and I think that's the thing that I keep touching on when I go to the style of things. It's when the ball gets into the final thirds, when we do transition and it gets into Rodrigo. That's why I've always said hold off on Rodrigo, because we need to see what happens in the final 6 games, which included Palace. We've gone through the honeymoon phase. We need to see him step up for these next 6 games now, because he's pivotal for us. He's absolutely pivotal for us. But I think the inaccurate passing, there was a hell of a lot from him. There was a hell of a lot from Luke Ayling on that right-hand side. Stuart Dallas was really struggling. The midfield were really, really ponderous when it came to finding the men. And that comes with having a target man as Dan James. But yeah, it does just seem at the minute that they're thinking a little bit too much about where to pass, where the system is, what they need to be doing. And I think that's why you saw maybe a little bit of frustration last night with Matthias Click when him and Jesse Marsh had words. But guys, uh, Connor said they'd lose 2-0. They didn't try to smash and grab. I don't know. Is that Palace trying to smash and grab? I don't think they did. I think they tried to put it on us, which the stats really back up. But yeah, I did say I thought we'd lose 2-0. I really did for this one. And I think if it wasn't for Meslier, Meslier I thought was man of the match. I'm going to get into player ratings because I want to do this on the final word as well. So make sure you get your player ratings in, everybody. Straight off the bat, Elan Meslier in goal. I've given him an 8. I thought his distribution under pressure a little bit last night was good. I thought he was excellent when he was coming to claim the ball. I thought in pressurized situations, he was really good. The Zaha double save was a good one. Made another decent save from Zaha, another good one from Conor Gallagher as well, which he tipped round the post. I thought he stepped up, looked a little bit more comfortable as well. So yeah, I thought Elan Meslier did really good. Did really well. English Connor. Luke Ayling. Now I've seen a lot on Luke. Maybe I disagree a little bit. There's no way he was man of the match. I thought Meslier was man of the match. I thought Luke was giving the ball away a lot. I thought, everyone keeps saying that he didn't get a yellow card against Wolf Zaha. I thought the referee maybe let him off a couple of times. I thought any other pedantic referee in this division gives him a yellow card in the first half. You know they do. This referee, to be fair to him, seemed to let it go. But yeah, I mean, I think his pass completion was pretty poor. I think the individual duels up against Zaha. Listen, Zaha didn't score, but Zaha, stats wise, had his best game, one of his best games of the season. 7 saves made by, I believe it was Elan Meslier, which is individual performance wise. I think it's Palace's highest of the season. So he did keep jinking past Luke Ayling. He did keep winning free kicks from Luke Ayling. He didn't score. Yeah, it was a good battle. But for me, Luke Ayling gets a 5. He gets a 5 for me. Listen, a lot of people thought he played really well. For me, why do you think he played really well? Because he was giving the ball away a hell of a lot. Zaha's a tricky customer, but he was beating him time and time again. And Luke Ayling gave away 3 free kicks last night in and around our box. I don't know. I think, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but get it in the comment section below. Luke was all right. Ed says 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. 5 is fair, says Pizzurial. I thought it was a 5. He was, and James has said, Ayling played well. I thought he was okay. He was okay. But I think I've seen people giving him 6, 7s, calling the same man of the match. Not for me. Cooper, I've given Coops a 7. Once again, a lot of you guys might disagree on that, but I am coming round to him organising the bunch a little bit more. He was just winning. Anytime the thing is with Coops is he'd head his grandma. That's the sort of guy he is. He's not a big lad, but I do think, imagine if this guy was 6'3". If he was 6'3", 6'4", he'd be an absolute monster. He's only 5'11", 6 foot, and he wins so much. Beating Mateta last night to a couple of balls. Mateta stands at 6'4", 6'5". I thought in pressurized situations, he was decent on the ball. He was trying to look for an out ball. I think normally we always talk about Cooper's crossfield balls, don't we? The song goes, Cooper's crossfield balls, we miss you when we're not playing and all that sort of stuff. He's not able to do that anymore because Leeds aren't playing out wide. So he's having to look centrally. And when the opposition teams are packing out the midfield, that's something the manager has to sort because, what's the centre-back option? What does he do? He has to hit it long. And then you've got, Dan James up front. So, Cooper was struggling for options last night, but I think when you look at defensive duels, I think when you look at his aerial ability, him sort of organising the back line, which you did see a lot more of last night when the Sky cameras were panning around on him. I think he was good. Lois has said 8 out of 10 for me. Since Cooper's come back, we played really well. So yeah, a lot of people going with 7s and 8s, and I think he was a 7. Llorente 5. All right. Thought he played all right. Some good blocks. But the lunging on Gallagher sums up Diego Llorente. I know he didn't get the ball. I know it hit his bum, but just stay on your feet, jockey him for a corner, And that is why, I just can never get excited about this guy. He's just a mistake waiting to happen. And I thought he'd done it last night. I thought he just, after nearly 85 minutes of work, I thought he'd given it away. But, Conor Gallagher was diving around all night, wasn't he? But, yeah, I thought he was all right. A good header from a corner. But, he still wouldn't be getting ahead of Robin Koch for me at centre-back. Yeah, 5 for me. 5 for me. A lot of people saying 6. Llorente stopped a certain goal from Mateta. He did. Yeah, he did, to be fair to him. I think, Niall, there was a couple of headers, though, in the first half where he's heading it into no man's land and you're getting Palace's central midfielders picking the ball up. There was one in the first half as well where it kept getting clipped over his head, and it's all just about body positioning. It's all about body positioning. Being that, having that communication with Cooper, that one's the covering centre back and one's going and attacking the ball. And I just feel with Llorente sometimes it's just his way. He just goes and does whatever he wants. But yeah, 5 for me. Dallas 3. Not a left back, not going to be a left back in this system. Slightly worrying that even when Firpo's fit, Dallas gets ahead of him, which just shows sort of shoddy recruitment in terms of bringing Firpo in. And Firpo shouldn't have got ahead of Dallas for me last night. But yeah, poor last night. I thought when Elise came on, he was giving him a bit of a lesson last night. Thought Ayew did all right against him as well. But I like Stu, but for me, he's a bench player next season. He's a bench player next season. Look, I know we all love him, but he's definitely a squad player. He's going to turn. Hopefully, he's going to turn into that James Milner utility man role, and we bring in a top left back. But yeah, in this system, he's always going to struggle. So 3 for me. Someone just said, "What's happened to Dallas, Mark?" He's just some of these players, mate. And it's difficult for everybody to grasp this, and it has been for me for a while. They're just not good enough to be at this standard consistently. They're just not. Look, I know what happened last season. I understand that, but that's then. This is now, okay? And Stu's a good player. He's a good player, but for me, he's a utility man. He really is. He's an engine who can be put anywhere, and that's no disrespect. But you're looking at a next level player up. People just have to get their heads around that now. He's not a starter for Leeds in the Premier League if we're looking at consistently getting top 10. So he's just not. And that is a marker for a lot of people in this Leeds United side. It is just what it is. It's a hard fact, but it is. No favouritism on this channel. Calvin Phillips, 4. I thought Gallagher was getting the run on him way too many times. He was in the box free as a bird so many times. He had, I think, 4 shots in the second half. Obviously, none of them went in. But Calvin, and I said this, didn't I? I said this in the preview. The system is going to be very difficult for him. He said in his post-match interview, he's still getting used to the system. He's rusty. He's not started in 141 games. In 141 games, 141 days. But he specifically referenced the system. Calvin, when he's coming back from injury, is naturally very fit. He's very good. He's very adept at getting back to his physical fitness, his peak physical fitness. But the system's going to be very different for him. It's going to be very different for him. You're not going to see the same Calvin Phillips as you saw under Marcelo Bielsa, where he stood out. You're not going to see it. Guarantee. Mark my words. I said this 4 weeks ago and I got pelters for it. You are not going to see the same Calvin Phillips. There isn't the same reliance on him. We're not going to see his attributes shine as much in the double pivot. It won't happen. And the man marking system, for example, at Ellen Road, where his task was to pick up Conor Gallagher wherever he went. And that's where Calvin stood out. Bruno Fernandes, when he played against Leeds United last season, Calvin's role was to man mark him. You didn't see Bruno Fernandes. Calvin is then highlighted as one of the top players for Leeds United, obviously, because he's done an excellent job on these players, which is what he's been doing for 4 years, in the man-marking system. And his role in that man-marking system is huge because of how good he is with defensive duels. When he's been asked to increase his mobility, when he's been asked not to use his distribution as much, when he's been asked to not just be that screen player in front of the back 4, it's completely different for Calvin Phillips. Completely different. And for me last night, obviously, he wasn't man marking Conor Gallagher. That wasn't his role. But it's very different in the double pivot. I thought he was poor. 4 out of 10. Gallagher was getting the run on him. I thought, Conor 4 lungs Gallagher is going to get the run on many players. But Calvin was rusty last night. But we've really got to look at this system thing with Calvin, and it's going to be interesting. You guys can spam hate in the comment section below. You could be right, but that's my prediction. I think in this system, we're not going to see the same player. Niall says, well, we'll see if Calvin is as good as we think and if he can adjust because all the players can adjust to new systems and still perform. I feel like he's going to get forward a lot more, potentially, mate, but he's still in a double pivot. He's still in a double pivot. But yeah, that's 4 from me. Robin came on 4 from me for Robin as well. As I've said earlier on, we don't need to go over that, but he's not a central defensive midfielder. Raf, I've given a 4. He's not been asked to play wide, and he's a winger. He's the widest winger you'll ever get. And he's been asked to play as an inverted winger. 4 for me. I don't think he's ever going to flourish in this system. Rodrigo, I thought was poor last night. 3. Harrison, was calling it in the preview. I wanted to, and we're giving excuses for Raf, so we've got to give excuses for Harrison in terms of being a wide player and currently being asked to play as an inverted winger. And that's something I think, with Jack Harrison, maybe I've not given him enough credit for, in terms of he's having to do the same thing as Raf in terms of, having to be an inverted winger, and we're giving Rafinha that excuse. So we do have to give Jack Harrison that excuse as well. He's never going to be a number 8. So the question then comes to the fore. Is he going to be moved on in the summer? I don't know. But yeah, I kind of wanted Jack to take the game by the scruff of the neck last night, called it in the preview. When you're coming up against Nathaniel Klein, I'd expect Jack to do more. He didn't. He was quiet again. And this is what I'm talking about with the consistency thing. Get hate all the time for saying Jack Harrison's not consistent. He's not. He's not a consistent football player. And I've said this. You guys know, if you've been a big follower of the channel, consistently say this. I've called him hot and cold Harrison before. 3 goals in his last 3 has been excellent. But, when you look at his season numbers, it's needs to be way more consistent. So 3 out of 10, and James 3 out of 10. That striker experiment just has to ease up. But yeah, a few points that I want to touch on towards the end. Obviously, Marsh touched on that the players been too spread out and players moving into this man for man system again naturally, which that it just has to stop. It just really, really has to stop. But I think we have to focus on positivity. I do. I think we have to focus on positivity. There's a lot of problems, but it is 11 points out of 15. Do you know what it is, everyone? I've watched Burnley's last 3 games, and there's a difference, and it's working. Watched them against West Ham, and Dyche had only been sacked 2 days before. Michael Jackson obviously came in, the under-23s lad, and Ben Mee came in as well. I think they're just working as a bit of a duo. Watched them against Southampton. Watched them against Wolves. Southampton, they recorded the most shots they've had in a Premier League first half in a number of years. 11 shots in the first half, I believe it was. Battering Southampton. Even though Southampton sort of had the first 5 to 8 minutes, really, when they should have scored. They're passing out from the back. They're trying to use that a little bit more. It's not all about hoofball. They're passing out from the back. The players all seem to have adapted straight away, even though it's completely different to playing the ball up to the big man and trying to work off the second balls. And I know Burnley's system has been a little bit more complex than that. I think people hammer Burnley when they should get a little bit more credit for the pressing numbers. But they're trying to play out a little bit more. They're keeping the ball on the ground. They're playing a little bit more wide. And it's working for them. And they've done that in 8 days. And in 8 days, they've picked up 7 points. So this is where the confusion comes to me a little bit, because that is definitely a different style to what Sean Dyche plays. It is. The players have all seemed to have adapted to it a little bit more. There doesn't seem to be a lack of belief in the system and confusion in the system, even though Ben Mee's never managed before. Michael Jackson's never managed the first team in the Premier League before. And that's where I look at it. I look at the styles and I think, we've had about 6 to 7, potentially 8 weeks in this style, and we're not seeing anything yet. Michael Jackson and Ben Mee, they've had 8 days. And let me just, another stat for you as well. Burnley had conceded in every single match under Sean Dyche in their last 6 bar 1. And in the last 3 games, they've scored every single. They've not scored. Sorry, so they've not scored in 5 out of their 6 last games under Sean Dyche. In the last 3 games, they've scored in every single game. So I'm just trying to say that there's been with that with that baton as well, you can turn around and say, well, when you compare that to Leeds, we were leaking loads of goals. We were leaking loads of goals, and now we're not leaking as many. Fair point, 100%. But I think you're seeing a little bit of a style. They're playing out wide. They're playing out from the back. It's not all about hoofball to the big man. They're taking more shots on goal, and Burnley seem to have adapted to it straight away. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think, as I say, guys, we do have to focus on a little bit of positivity. We do. We've got 11 points in 15, which is fantastic. Really good. We're one of the form teams. We're on 34 points. We're still outside the relegation zone, which is excellent. Absolutely excellent. And let's hope we can get something against Man City. Let's hope we can get something against Arsenal and Chelsea. Some tough games coming up. But yeah, I think it'll be very indicative of of the sort of style going into the next sort of 4 or 5 games. It's just going to be fascinating to see, and hopefully we can pick something up. Jason Pete, Matty Ducker will go to first in the building. It's a valuable point. 5 games unbeaten, two clean sheets. There's still a massive improvement. Matty, valuable point. 5 games unbeaten, 2 clean sheets. I wanted to touch on before as well, before I leave you guys. Just we're talking about the valuable point and the 5 games unbeaten, 2 clean sheets, all completely valid, mate. I think the difference with the last 4 out of the 6 games that we've had, last 5, I should say, sorry, when you do look at the form table, the teams that we've beaten, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th in the form table. So, you look at Watford, they've been absolutely appalling, haven't they? Southampton have been god-awful. And when you look at sort of the last 10 games, Norwich up there have been really poor. And Villa have been very, very bad as well. When you're looking at the next caliber of teams we're facing, and this is when everyone keeps saying, we're unbeaten in 5, which is true, 2 clean sheets, but we still have to get them on the points on the board, but it's against a certain standard of team, and we all knew that those 6 games Leeds had to get some serious points in, even when Bielsa was here. But we all also knew that this run towards the back end of last season was going to be very, very difficult. We are now coming up against first in the form table, second in the form table, 4th in the form table, 7th in the form table, and 10th in the form table. So we're coming up against teams who are performing towards the back end of the season. They really are. So there's going to have to be an improvement in performance. There is, because obviously these next 5 games are going to be, they're completely different to the games that we've just played, of course, but I think they're going to be different in terms of difficulty as well. So you have to see more from Leeds United. You have to see more. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the first edition of The Final Word. As I say, guys, 34 points, 11 points in 15. But let's see what happens, shall we? Sort of a battling performance, and let's hope we can get something against Man City. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. We will have the debrief hopefully tomorrow. We'll have your preview, which I'm going to have to, unfortunately, merge with the tactical analysis this week, which I wanted to make 2 different shows, but I might stick one on my Patreon. That's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to stick the tactical analysis on my Patreon. So if you want to join the Patreon, the link is in the description below. I'm going to be putting loads and loads of stuff on there. In the next coming weeks, hopefully, and going into next season, I'm going to try and make that a thing. So if you want to see more tactical analysis and you want to touch on the Man City game, might try and get an opposition lad to come in and have a discussion about it. Make sure you do that. Guys, have a good one, and I will see you in a bit. Cheers.